Hello to everybody. Well, I will start this presentation framing a little bit my research proposal because it was quite different since last time you saw it, and it's just a couple of slides. And then I will start talking with partially about this paper and all the framework of this paper is. Basically, my dissertation is about ideological polarization. Well, since I started with this project, I had two very broad research questions, and this made me, this made me go more in the direction of writing some papers instead of writing the big thesis, because they're very different topics in a sense, even they're correct. And well, in this case, I'm working on the second research question, which is about the effects of ideological polarization. I want to, before define polarization, just to give you an idea if you don't know already, and then I will start describing my paper. I found an interesting definition of polarization, which is actually very cool for my point of view, because it kind of gives an idea of polarization, which is not about political science or anything, but it's really about opinion polarization, which is pretty much what I'm looking for. In political science, we have two schools of thought. One sees polarization as a kind of process of differentiation, and well, I'm using these marketing similarities because I think they give pretty much the idea of what they mean with polarization. So basically, in this case, when the choice set is broader, is larger, people are more they have more choice, and they can recognize the difference between the parties. However, there's another view of polarization which is normally overlooked by this kind of literature, which sees polarization as more a conflict, an accentuation of conflict. And this goes back to Sartori, which came out with a theory about polarized pluralism. And well, so far it wasn't really, everybody talk about polarized pluralism, but empirically there's not such a lot of research about the real effect of polarized pluralism. Well, basically, yeah, this is pretty much a sum up of the two things. There are, in both the cases, a feature of the party system, so we're talking about the variable, which is at the country level. And, well, it's measured with the distance between parties on a given dimension, empirically. And this is the measurement I'm using even now. The difference between these 2 points of view is that, yeah, there's this conflict versus differentiation, and of course we expect different effects. Well, there are some evidence about the consequences of polarization. The differentiation hypothesis is supported by some quite recent pieces of work, while the effect of, the conflict hypothesis has been supported quite recently, and well, it's basically, I was working on this topic as well, and well, according to what they find, it actually, polarization seems to lead to a more directional way to make decision, and well, this makes complete sense to me. Well, in this paper, I kind of come up with my alternative idea instead of the directional proximity. The theory is straightforward. It's not really a big theoretical setting. If polarization is an accentuation of the conflict, we basically should expect the support for a party to be something kind of exclusive. So basically, if you are a supporter for a party A, for example, you don't really perceive it as your choice in this moment and as something that you support this party because it's closer to you in terms of policy, but you will see as a kind of supporting a team, or well, they use the metaphor of football cheering and all the theories about the expressing mood. And it's pretty much the same thing. What I expect is polarization to be connected with a kind of extreme stability of the electorate, because the two parts, which are two parties, or the two blocks, the two left-right blocks, are really against one. One is they're really against one to each other. So they're really, the vote becomes something which is more mutually exclusive. And see, I used again the marketing metaphor, this loyalty. I don't know whether we're in paper, but it might make sense. I had a couple of ideas about how to test this, and well, this is the idea that I didn't implement in the paper. It was just to use the past vote and the present vote, and to see how the shift works. The idea was to code 0 if they stay on the same party, 1 if they move to another party in the same block, left-right block, I mean. So if they go to another party on their same side of the left-right, and 2 if they shift from the other part. And maybe run this in a multinomial model using polarization at level 2, and well, this requires I don't think there's a multi-level multinomial logistic regression, but I can use a two-step multi-level, and I will work on that in the next weeks, months. For this paper, I was trying to also discuss with you an idea that I have to use PTV scores that we were talking about before. I basically had this idea of using PTV instead of stack them. I mean, all right, PTVs are propensity vote scores, so they're asked about how it's likely that you're going to vote for a party from 0 to 10. And well, they're used like they're pretty similar to the like-dislike variables in this CSCS, or the feeling thermometer in the American election study. Normally, they're used in a way that a party. I mean, you have a different PTV for every party. Normally, they will structure the matrix in a static version, and they just use it as a dependent variable for the prediction. In this case, I wanted to use them to use them as densities on left-right points, and these points of the left-right are represented by where the parties are on the left-right. In this way, I can model the distribution of the preference for every individual on the left-right as pretty much as a discrete distribution. Every individual will have a distribution, so every individual has some parameters. Every individual has a central tendency, which in most of the cases is very close to where they place themselves. And every individual, of course, has an index of dispersion, which is nothing more than the standard deviation of this measurement. The idea, the logic in this case is that the more, for environmental reason or for individual reason, the party preference is exclusive, the more this distribution should be narrow on the left-right. This is a graphic example. We have 4 parties, which are the 4 red lines, and we have 2 different individuals. They both support party 1 first on the left, but they have 2 very different distributions. The first one is actually supports only party 1, and it will never vote for any other party. Well, party 2 answered that he might vote for the second, the third, and the fourth party. Why not? And his level of his index of dispersion is, of course, bigger. This was the logic. Does it make sense? Okay. Well, this is just a description of the distribution of the dependent variable. I have a lot of zeros because apparently a lot of people say that they vote just for one party. They just gave the maximum value of one party. By the way, these values are all divided by the sum of all the PTVs that every individual express. So basically, they are like sum up from 0 to 1. They're standardized. So there are no problems of comparability in this sense. Yeah, okay. Apart from all these zeros, it follows a nice, normal-looking distribution. I got some results. The variable is actually has some problems. I have to understand why some things. I mean, it's really sensitive on where the individual places himself, where it's more extreme or more towards the center, which is basically related to the central tendency of the distribution of the individual. This has an effect on the standard deviation, of course. And well, polarization has a curvilinear effect according to. I mean, my idea was that if polarization means really the differentiation just doesn't have any effect in kind of narrowing down individual views. But if it's more a conflictual thing, then it should do. So my hypothesis was about a curvilinear effect in this sense. And yeah, I find a very weak curvilinear effect, but I don't think this is actually. I mean, it's pretty weak and it's quite strange. So it might be a problem of the measurement. But this was an experiment anyway. Well, all these zeros, they look very different from all of the rest of the sample. So maybe they should be modeled different. This is one idea that they have. Well, these are the regressions that I did with it's a multi-level model. I used this variable as a dependent variable and some predictor at individual level, some predictors at the country level. Well, basically the variables are significant. big correlation between left-right extremity and polarization itself. It means that if I take off left-right extremity, which is where how individual is extreme on the left-right, and yeah, okay, here also put an interaction, but if I take off left-right extremity, polarization is not significant anymore, which is one of the reasons why my variable is to be left. Well, so my conclusion here is that I have to work a little bit more on this variable if I want to use this. Maybe just write something about this variable, do some descriptives, and see how it performs in some case, and maybe just use it as a dependent variable. Well, another thing that I'm working on right now is a kind of alternative index of polarization. That, well, it came to my mind at a certain point, and I think it might provide more. I mean, it might provide a better measurement of how polarization is a conflictual thing. It's more about how the two blocks are compact, which is more idea of polarization. It's not just distance. It's more, I mean, as the word says, polarization. There are two poles. Well, that's it.